Dear students, welcome to the UGC EPG Pathashala on Human Rights and Duties. Under the unit on National Mechanisms for Protection and Enforcement of Human Rights, we will take up the module on National Commission for Scheduled Castes. My name is Professor Y.S.R. Murthy. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Human Rights Studies, O.P. Jindal Global University. Before we go into the module in detail, I wish to give you a brief background about the caste discrimination. If you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in the year 1948, in the very first article, it says or it proclaims that all human beings are born free and are equal in dignity and rights. And further, it goes on to explain the principle of non-discrimination. In the subsequent human rights conventions which have been adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, the principle of non-discrimination in the enjoyment of rights has taken a firm root. For instance, in the year 1966, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights was adopted. Again, you find that Article 2 proclaims that or requires all countries which are party to the ICCPR to ensure to everyone the entire range of civil and political rights which are mentioned in that covenant without any distinction based on race, gender, place of origin and other grounds. So, in other words, the covenant proclaims a range of civil and political rights. They are supposed to be enjoyed by everyone regardless of any distinctions, and these civil and political rights include such important rights as right to life, right to be free from torture, right to be free from slavery, freedom of speech and expression, freedom of conscience and religion, and many other rights. And in the year 1966, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly. This covenant again talks about such important rights as right to work, right to humane conditions of work, right to food and adequate standard of living, right to education, right to health care, right to social security, etc. And this International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights again emphasizes that the full range of economic, social, cultural rights which are mentioned in that covenant must be enjoyed by every human being regardless of any distinctions. Now, subsequently, you find that there is one more international convention on the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination has been adopted. It also proclaims that it first defines what is meant by racial discrimination, and it also requires countries which are party to that convention to take steps. In each of the human rights conventions, the states which are parties to these conventions are required to take a series of steps, including among others legislative, executive, judicial, educational and other measures to give effect to the full range of human rights. Now, let us come to our own constitution, which after our independence we have given to ourselves. In the preamble, there is a reference to the social justice. There is a reference to political and economic justice. And if you see Article 14 of the Constitution, it talks about right to equality and equal protection of laws. And Article 15 also refers to the measures taken for uplifting any socially and educationally backward classes. And one also finds that the Constitution, keeping in account the discrimination that has been faced by groups for several centuries, has mentioned very clearly and referred to the Constitution how discrimination has affected certain groups access to, let us say, wells for drinking water, public places, temples, etc. So, this is based on, this can be described as a social disability. It's like a group, persons belonging to a particular group want to access certain facilities, including temples, public places, wells, etc. But they had difficulties in their access. And now let me come to the issue of caste discrimination or casteism, or the issue of caste. In India, over many centuries, the caste system was in vogue, and just because certain persons were born into a particular caste and for historical reasons they were engaged in unclean occupations or certain menial tasks, they were discriminated against. The Constitution of India, having regard to the injustices suffered by persons belonging to scheduled castes for many centuries, has put in place a detailed scheme, and for instance, a series of articles refer to the actions which are required to be taken, and for protecting the rights of these bodies. In fact, today we are going to take up the National Commission for Scheduled Castes, the structure, composition, functions, and we have already seen the Paris Principles, which are the basic principles upon which any national human rights institution should be founded. And we have also seen the National Human Rights Commission in some detail and the National Commission for Women. Now, today we are going to take up the National Commission for Scheduled Castes. At the end of this module, you will understand the historical background to the creation of the National Commission for Scheduled Castes in India, in addition to its mandate, functions, powers and activities. You will also have an occasion to assess the need for a separate autonomous body dealing with the rights of scheduled castes in India. You will also appreciate the relevance of National Commission for Scheduled Castes recommendations for making it even more effective in its functioning. Now, what is the basis for a national body for the protection and promotion of human rights of scheduled castes in India? As I said, the persons belonging to SCs have suffered the practice of untouchability and other forms of discrimination owing to the Varna system. These atrocities took the form of killing, rape, assault, sexual violations, etc. When you look at the practice of bonded labor, child labor, manual scavenging, you find that a large proportion of persons belonging to SCs are affected by these menaces, and there are also other challenges faced by persons with scheduled castes. Women SCs suffer from double discrimination on account of being gender and also on account of their caste status. That's why our constitution drafters made elaborate provisions for advancing the socially and economically backward castes under Article 341 and under Article 366. This affirmative action is one of the largest anywhere in the world, and the casteism, which talks about caste discrimination, and as a result of this casteism, SCs were not able to compete with the so-called upper caste or high caste people, and this discrimination has affected the persons from scheduled castes, particularly denial of access to places of public importance like temples, wells, public squares, etc., and accompanied by other atrocities. And this is the background in which the National Commission for Scheduled Castes must be viewed, and Article 338 of the Constitution talks about establishment of a separate office under the Indian Constitution, and that's why Commissioner for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes was created, and subsequently it was felt that there should be a multi-member commission, and that's why in 1978 such a multi-member commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes came into existence, and it was renamed as a National Commission for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes following a constitution amendment bill in the year 1990. And it played the role of an advisor on major policy matters concerning SCs. And as a result of the 89th Amendment to the Constitution, this Commission for Scheduled Castes and the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes were bifurcated and made into two bodies in the year 2004. This National Commission for Scheduled Castes is required to review the constitutional and legal safeguards for scheduled castes, recommend remedial legislative measures, facilitate redressal of grievances, and advise the government on all policy matters affecting scheduled castes. What is the mandate of this commission, which is established for the upholding the rights of scheduled castes? It is expected to act as a supervisor for the schemes, legislations, and other measures introduced for the upliftment of SCs in India. Dr. Punia, who was at the helm of affairs of the National Commission, said, committed to the implementation of Protection of Civil Rights Act, Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989, and the Commission is expected to ensure that the economic development schemes for scheduled caste population are properly implemented, and to ensure that reservations are implemented at every level. And what are the functions, duties, and powers of this commission? Article 338 of the Indian Constitution lays down the functions, duties, and powers of the National Commission. The Commission is entrusted with a wide ambit of functions and duties. These include, among others, a number of things, and they give it a character which encompasses advisory role, reporting, investigating, evaluative, remedial, educational, and supervisory duties. Now, let us look at the National Commission for Scheduled Castes as a supervisor of the constitutional and legislative safeguards for SCs. One of the most important functions of this commission is to supervise that the SCs are not deprived of their rights, and it is also expected to supervise various legislative safeguards which have been brought into effect in pursuance of affirmative actions, and it is required to ensure the all-round development and freedom from exploitation. Mind you, caste discrimination and freedom from exploitation are an important things, and ensure that social justice against them is totally removed from the society. And what are these constitutional legislative safeguards? For instance, Article 17 talks about abolition of untouchability. Article 23, 24, 25 also talk about, and then economic safeguards are provided in Article 23, 24 and 46, and then educational and cultural safeguards are provided in Article 15, 4, 46. Political safeguards are mentioned in Article 243, 330 and 332. Service safeguards are mentioned in Article 16.4, 16.4a and 335. Some legislations which are presently in force are the Protection of Civil Rights Act 1955, the Scheduled Castes, Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989 and rules thereof, and this has been recently amended, and the Scheduled Castes and the Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Amendment Act came into force in 2015. Under this Amendment Act, rules have been also framed by the executive, and these rules have been notified in the year 2016, and the employment of manual scavengers and construction of dry latrines Prohibition Act was initially enacted by the Parliament in the year 1993, and subsequently it was again amended in the year 2013 to make it more effective. All these acts and regulations are in force in different states to prevent alienation of land belonging to SCs and STs, and in some states that provision exists in the Land Revenue Code. There are acts in different states for restoration of alienated land. That means it used to belong to SCs and STs, but it has been taken over by somebody, and these laws seek to ensure that it is returned back. Now let us look at how the commission has performed, and if you pick up the annual report of 2015-16, you will find that the commission has been conducting review meetings, hearings, spot visits, studies. It has also presented specific recommendations based on its own observations. In 2015-16, the National Commission for Scheduled Castes conducted reviews of 8 state governments and also 15 central public undersector undertakings and also banks and autonomous bodies. This commission conducted 61 spot visits to monitor atrocity cases. The commission took suo motu notice of an incident relating to the devastation of 125 huts of Mahadalit families due to fire in Navada, Bihar. The National Commission for SCs also held 17 divisional and district reviews, and following the intervention of the commission, 299 FIRs were lodged, 44 arrests were made, and 223 charge sheets were filed. And then it also recommended financial compensation to the tune of 49 lakh thousand, which was sanctioned to the victims and families of victims. It visited 2 jails, 16 scheduled caste girls and boys hostels in various states to ascertain the living conditions and to make recommendation. The commission dealt with nearly 40,000 cases based on individual complaints, of which it was able to dispose of nearly 10,000 complaints. The commission rendered advice on 7 major policy issues concerning scheduled castes and 2 proposals of inclusion, exclusion of castes, and 20 de-reservation proposals, and the National Commission for Scheduled Castes reviewed and monitored the implementation of safeguards and development of scheduled castes, and it gave a series of recommendations for further strengthening the effectiveness of the National Commission for SCs. It should be given its own separate and investigative wing. It should be given a separate budget heads with separate entitlement and demands for grants, and there is an urgent need for increased sanction of staff both at its headquarters and in its state offices. And it has been pursuing the ministry to fill up the existing vacancies which are hampering its functioning. It has been advocating with the ministry to accept its recommendations for opening more state offices and upgrading the existing ones. And the Commission pointed out major infirmity in the way its recommendations as a civil court are treated. Supreme Court of India made an observations in the case of All India Overseas Bank, SC/ST Employees Welfare Association and others versus Union of India. The Supreme Court said the National Commission for SC's powers of a civil court are restricted only to summoning and enforcing attendance of any person, examination of witnesses under oath, examining documents, and not to grant injunctions. And the recommendations of the National Commission for Scheduled Castes need to be made binding in practice. Now, in conclusion, we have seen in this module an overview of the National Commission for Scheduled Castes and its constitutional role and functions in alleviating the status of scheduled castes in the society, the framework governing its genesis and its impact amply provide the road for fulfilling its mandate. However, operational barriers which are further compounded by bureaucratic indifference, they present a huge challenges for the National Commission for Scheduled Castes which need to be overcome urgently. As I said, caste discrimination and casteism are serious challenges. They do not allow persons belonging to SCs to enjoy their full range of human rights which are provided under the Constitution of India or in the international conventions to which India is a party, and there is a need to make the National Commission for Scheduled Castes more stronger and effective body, and to ensure that the rights which are guaranteed to the persons belonging to scheduled castes become a reality. Thank you.